One second. There we go. Good morning. Welcome to another Super Galactic Saturday. I'm Jerry Sr. with Jerry Jr.,
Good morning.
and we are live and feeling good, feeling great, thankful.
It's
It's a
sunny for
beautiful,
once.
sunny day. Yeah, summer is coming. It's June. The June gloom has burned away, and we can see the sky. We can see blue.
I
It's
forgot it
nice.
was blue.
Yeah, it was nice and warm, and I actually went to the beach this morning, rode my bike, had some fun, good exercise, beautiful, beautiful time at the beach. The weather was nice up there as well. So I hope everyone out there is having a good time, having a good morning, um, being safe, being happy, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And yeah, we got a few things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of DC content that's been released lately. They just announced a new comic book uh, arc series called Absolute Power. I don't know if you saw the trailer for that.
Yeah, I did.
Um,
I did actually.
but basically, the whole premise is, apparently the entire Justice League gets their powers stolen
Yeah.
by it looks like is uh, Katniss. If you remember Katniss from
Oh, you
the,
mean
I mean, I know from Justice League Unlimited.
Cadmus? Yeah, Cadmus,
Yeah.
Amanda Waller. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what it looks like.
Katniss.
They
Yeah.
steal their powers, and I
And
guess they take the powers and use them for themselves, like for their own version of the heroes or something like that.
right,
That's what it kind of looked like. Like they
right.
created their own sort of Justice League, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah. It looks like basically it's a very. It looks like they created robot versions of the Justice League almost, and then so what it seems like, and is sort of leading the charge because he doesn't have any powers. So it's like well actually no it's we see Superman, he's got a new suit. It's kind of reminiscent of, I don't know if you, yeah, if for anyone who remembers the death of Superman, when he
Yeah,
came back he kind of had like a black and silver suit, kind of looks like that. um but yeah, it's so the Justice League has to fight without using their powers.
yeah. That's
And
kind of interesting. Some of the comments are funny. They're like, Batman's like, "Welcome to my world," right?
yeah.
Fighting with no powers. So it's like,
No,
okay,
my
so
favorite comic is with other superpowers, Batman's credit card decline.
yeah, yeah, I like that. It's kind of interesting. It's an interesting premise. Um, I don't have a problem with it. It sounds kind of fascinating. Um, to say, hey, what would it be like if they didn't have their abilities, and what would they do? How would they deal with a crisis or with some kind of villain?
Right.
So yeah, that's I think that could be interesting to to find out, right? Um, it's kind of funny, the idea of powers, just that whole logic. It's popular obviously in comic book lore and just in general with
Yeah.
in animation and movies. And it's like the powers can be turned off and on, right? Like there's this little compartment inside your brain or something. That's where your powers come from,
Right.
like
Yeah.
a little tiny generator or something. And if we just turn it off or block it or something or obstruct it, then your powers are gone. And it's kind of like, well, like just being human, right? We understand that's not how it works. Like I can have like I can be a strong guy, right? I can
Right.
lift, 300 pounds, right? But then I can also have an injury, or my left arm is weaker for some reason, right? Maybe it
Yeah.
gets injured for a while, so I can't work it out. Now my right arm is stronger than my left arm. Like I haven't lost my power, right? You
Hmm.
understand? It's like
Well,
I can build. It's like what is a power?
I always
Um, you know,
imagine it's like if you remember Superman versus the Elite.
Yeah,
when Superman
yeah, that's right.
lobotomizes the British dude,
Yeah, that's right.
because he
Because
had
it
those.
was the consequence of a tumor. So his
Hmm.
abilities was because of some weird tumor in his head, right? Which is, that's kind of fascinating when you think about it, right? Like, oh, so it's similar to what's that movie? I forgot what it's called. It starred John Travolta. It's an old movie, but where
John Travolta.
he had this weird kind of psychic ability where he can kind of predict things with the weather and all this stuff, and it's called Phenomenon. That's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
And you find out later that because he thought he had some kind of visitation, right? Some kind of heavenly being or UFO, who knows, right? And they gave him
Hmm.
this power, only to find out later in the movie that no, you had a episode because of a tumor in your head, and it caused you to pass out and all these, and you saw bright light, blah blah blah, right? And so what he mistook for an encounter with otherworldly, figures was really his tumor kind of just going out of control. You know,
That's kind of nuts.
and the consequence was, yeah, he had this kind of weird, you know, sort of unlocked something in his brain that allowed him to kind of just know things and have this, sensibility. And so, yeah, I kind of like that. That's kind of an interesting take on abilities. Like, what if it falls more in line with how nature actually works, where
Mm,
it's we talk about evolution, but really it's just natural selection, and even in that, it's generally a loss of information, right, based on environmental factors, et cetera, and genetics, right.
mm,
And so, yeah, like if you have this tumor, well, the tumor is a terrible thing. You're going to die, right? But a
yeah.
consequence of it is, well, now you have this kind of weird ability, right? You have this, like it's kind of an interesting dichotomy, right?
Do you
So,
want the good news or the bad news
yeah,
first?
exactly. The good news is you're a
Got
superhero, right?
psychic powers.
Yeah. The
That
bad
is,
news,
you
you're
got
gonna
a deadly
die.
tumor.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, it's like
Well,
it's an interesting kind of concept in, like I said, in superhero lore, right?
if it
That
works,
powers
yeah.
can be taken or given back, right?
Well, if it works out, I think it would be a good way. If if it's if good writing, then it'd be an excellent way to showcase, uh, put more emphasis on the hero's character,
Right.
specifically, right?
Right.
Because everyone's always complaining, like, oh, well, Superman is Superman
Yeah.
because of his
OP.
powers. Well, it's not just that, but like people think that what makes Superman is his powers, right? But what makes Superman is the fact that he's Clark Kent, right? Is the fact that
Yeah.
he's this
Well, his character, right?
everyman
What makes
who wants to
Superman
be.
super is his nature, his character,
Yeah,
as much as his abilities, right? Like the fact that he has these amazing abilities and he chooses to do good with it, right? He
exactly.
chooses to be selfless versus selfish, right?
Hmm.
And that's what separates him from the rest, right? I mean, he's the quintessential hero archetype because of that, right?
Yeah,
Because you are, and we were talking about this earlier before we went live, that he is, considered a godlike being, right? And but he uses his abilities, his power for good, for the good of mankind, right? And it's like I was saying, superheroes aren't gods, but they should be godlike, meaning they should reflect the nature of God, right? The nature of God is to be good. The fact that we exist shows that God is good, right? The fact that He allows us to enjoy blessings and et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, we understand Christ as a factor, right? That he was crucified on our behalf, right? So it's that selflessness that, despite massive power, right, I choose to use it for your good, not for my own selfish gain, right? And
right,
that's what makes Superman super, and any superhero, right? That's what makes them a hero, is
right,
the desire to do good with the abilities that they have, right?
right.
So, but,
But
but
now that
yeah,
they don't
yeah,
have their abilities, I'm saying, hopefully this will be a chance to have their characters
right, to
put more in the
really, yeah,
forefront, to
that's
really
exactly right.
emphasize
Yeah,
this is what makes Superman Superman with or without his
yeah,
powers.
yeah. Is he still
Same thing with the
willing to?
Flash or even Wonder
Yeah,
Woman.
to
everybody
put
else.
himself in harm's way to save a life, to do what's right.
Hmm.
Are they willing to stand? And yeah, that could be a great opportunity to really exemplify like why is the Justice League who they are.
Right.
Why is it these seven, right, versus anyone else? Well, it's because and it reminds me of the Justice League Unlimited, where what was it, the Cadmus arc, right? Ironically, right? Where
Yeah.
the Watchtower is attacked and all this stuff, and the original seven members, like the founding, uh, Justice League members, they turned themselves in because there was a attack and they're blamed for it, right?
Hmm.
And the fact that they're willing to say, we're willing to acquiesce to the law, right? Even though we're innocent, right? And the only one that didn't do was Batman.
With Batman,
But
yeah.
even with Batman, he wasn't being a coward. He was saying, "Well, forget that. I'm going to prove my innocence."
Right.
Right? That's what he said. I'm going to fight and prove my innocence. I'm not going to, go ahead and let these guys,
Hmm.
put in other words, I'm not going to put my fate in the hands of people who are trying to destroy me. Right?
Right.
So on the one hand, it's like which one was right? Well, in a way, both were right. Right? It was like, yeah, like we should show the people that, hey, we're not above the law, right? So that's why the rest of the members turn themselves in. But then at the same time, Batman's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just part time anyway. I'm going to prove my innocence,
Yeah.
and not just his, but everyone. Right? He was fighting for everybody, and he did. He cracked the case. He figured out, what was going on just in time, right? So it's like, yeah, and but there's a scene where I think it's Supergirl and Steel, right? And
Yeah.
he's upset and he's telling her like, well, it's like these guys are the best of the best, right? Not because they're superpowered, right? And I'm paraphrasing, is it, but because they're willing to do what's necessary. They're willing to do what's right no matter what.
Right.
Like they're willing to go the distance. And that's what separates them from the rest because they've proven it time and time again, right? They're willing to do whatever it takes to do what is right to bring justice to the situation, right? And yeah, hopefully that will be a great story that will help exemplify those qualities in all of the members, right?
Yeah.
Maybe create some contrast with other non-Justice Leaguers who may have lost their powers. And like a good example of that is My Hero Academia, right?
Oh yeah.
Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. But we get into like what, the sixth season, I think, fifth or sixth season, where
Hmm.
all chaos breaks loose, right? The villains have come together and they're kind of destroying the city, and a lot of the heroes, they kind of turn, they turn and run, you know, they don't stand firm. They actually kind of just give up, you know, and leave the
Yeah.
people, except for a few, including of course our main characters and the academia, right? They don't, right? They actually go out and they try to help whoever they can. But there are like professional heroes, meaning, once they saw like their heroes, right, their mentors be basically taken out, you know,
Yeah.
by these villains, they're like, whoa, this is too much, So they still had their abilities and they still cut and ran, right? They gave up, they quit, they fled, Um, so yeah, that's that was like a dark moment in that series.
Yeah.
Like it really was. It was like, whoa, like a lot of these heroes are kind of just like, I'm done, bro. Like this is crazy, you know,
Yeah.
and it just shows like even having abilities, and it's a reflection of reality. Like even there's people who have a lot of resources, have power in the sense
Hmm.
of connections or wealth, or physically they're just capable, and they're like, no thanks, when
Yeah.
it comes to issues in their community or whatever, right? Or dealing with any type of conflict. And
Yeah.
so it's like a lot of times it isn't just about being capable or having a skill or strength or ability. It's also, what are you willing to do with it? How far are you
Yeah.
willing to push yourself to do what is right,
Yeah.
right? To do what is good, and how many times, how many situations have there been, even, looking at our own lives where we should have spoken up or did something and we didn't, and we could have, you know what I
Right.
mean? We could have made a difference and we didn't. And that's really what it's about. So yeah, I hope absolute power is good. I hope it does touch on a lot of those points and more, and does justice to the Justice League. Like really
Yeah.
gives us something fun to read and compelling and entertaining. So,
Yeah.
so
Let us
yeah,
know if you're excited in the comments below. Let us know which hero you're excited to see without superpowers. Let us know uh, what's it
yeah. Let
called?
us know if you're looking forward to it, if you're excited.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta admit, I'm not really following DC or Marvel very much anymore because of a lot of what they've been doing over the last few years with the DEI stuff and injecting you know uh, so-called representation into everything. It's been very annoying. So
Well, a big. A bigger issue is that a lot of the stories just haven't been that
haven't been
good.
very compelling. That's
Yeah.
that's what I mean. It's
Uh,
just hyper emphasis on the wrong things, right? And so, despite the so-called representation, it's like you're still giving us like mediocre to bad stories, right?
well, it's
So
not even just that. It's just that just bad stories in general. Like the whole we were talking about the injustice thing. Like I wouldn't say that was I guess whatever a D E Y I story, whatever you want to call it. It was just a bad story, right? It worked for the video game because it was just a video game. It was a one and done thing. But then they tried to make it into like an entire, alternate universe thing, right? Where you got the evil Superman and he's a dictator. And yeah, it just went into some weird directions that I personally didn't like. The best part about that whole story was, uh, funny enough, Plastic Man. It was like the only cool thing in the Injustice story in the comics. I don't know if you read the Injustice comics at all.
no, like I said,
Yeah,
I liked the first game, mainly
yeah,
because it ends with Superman taking out the evil Superman, right?
yeah.
So that was great. But overall, yeah, it's never really appealed to me. Um, I saw the movie, and
The movie was weird. The
yeah, it,
movie was
it
weird.
wasn't. I don't. I didn't care for it. Um, it's very dark. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
a lot of characters die. All this kind of stuff. And it's just not. I don't know. I don't find it very appealing. I guess because it's so cynical. There's a lot of cynicism, and especially the way it kind of concludes, where they bring out Lois. You know.
Well, that's the thing is, I don't think there's an issue. I don't have an issue with characters dying. I think the way they die
No, yeah, I don't
is,
either. It's just like, but it doesn't come. There's no up from there. You understand?
yeah,
It's just downhill from there. Like there's
yeah.
no like in contrast,
There's no
right?
there's no
Uh,
lesson learned, right? There's no moral. There's
yeah, there's
no
no point to it. But
yeah.
like in contrast, there's Gurren Lagann, right? One of my favorite animes. Um, and in that, once again, spoiler if you've never seen it. By this time, you should have. It came out
Yeah.
like what, almost 20 years ago or whatever. But
That's crazy.
in it, what seemed to be the main character is killed. Right, he's killed
Yep.
by the enemy.
Hmm.
In combat, and his sort of mentee, right, his protege, so to speak, right, his little brother is distraught, right, like just depressed. He lost his big brother. He lost his best friend. And but yet, even despite that, right? And the subsequent episodes was like a couple where I have to admit, watching it for the first time, I was kind of like, man, this kid's getting on my nerves, man. He's always depressed. It's like, it's so, I almost, a lot of people did. I found out a lot of people when they first watched it, they stopped watching it, because, because of Kamina's death, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I was tempted for the same reason. It's kind of like, what's happening? Like, I don't like this, right? So, but I plowed through, and I tell you, it pays off.
Oh yeah.
Because there's an episode, it's two, maybe three episodes later, right? Our new main character, which was always the main character, you realize he was always the main character, not a
Right.
side character. He finally steps up. He overcomes his depression and his, being distraught, and he becomes victorious. Right? Because
Yeah.
he overcomes that. Among other things, his lack of confidence. There's a lot of other issues he has. Like, he's kind of cowardly. He overcomes that in the midst of battle, and he defeats the enemy, and he triumphs, and he basically becomes the new de facto leader of the group that they're in, right? The
Right.
team that they're, and it's unanimous, right? The other team, even though they were kind of squabbling about who's the leader, and then there was one character that was like, "Yeah, it's going to be me," right? Because he was very similar to the original character, right? But they even acquiesce and realize, yeah, this guy's he's it, he's the leader, right? And it's like, yeah, it was very satisfying, and but it's like that's the whole point, right? Despite the despair around them, right? They're facing an enemy that seems unconquerable. That's one. They have
Hmm.
very few resources. They're not very educated.
No,
They're not very smart, except
they
for like
lived
a couple of,
literally under a rock.
yeah, they lived underground, right? For crying out loud. So they don't know what anything is, right? They barely knew what the moon was, right?
Yeah.
And yet, they overcame just by pure grit and determination, right? And also holding on to optimism, to hope that they will triumph. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you compare that to an Injustice where Nightwing gets killed by the new Robin, by accident, but it's like,
Yeah.
bro, what are you guys doing? Then Paul Kent gets murdered,
Yeah,
it's
that
like,
was crazy.
dude, what's happening? Like, what? Even what's the other one? Justice League Dark Apocalypse, right? That title says it all. There is no hope in that movie at all. It's one of my
Yeah,
least favorite DC, and I love DC animation. I really do.
I never liked
But
that
but
movie.
I do. I love like the Aquaman movie. You know what I mean?
No, I'm just saying that whole new. I guess was that the
The
new
new 52.
52?
Yeah, some of those were
Yeah,
really good. That's
some
what
of
I'm
them were
saying. Early
good,
on, they were good, but when they
but
got
a
to
lot of
Dark
them I didn't like.
Apocalypse, it was like, bro, what are they doing? Like, it was just so depressing, right? Like, and there's no hope whatsoever. Like, it's like the only thing they have is Flash. Go back in time and just start over. Like,
Yeah,
really? That's it? That's what you got? Like, no, we're gonna rebuild. We're gonna, create a better society, a better world. Nothing. It was like, bro, this is,
yeah.
terrible. Just go back
So,
and, like, we're gonna try again. Like, what?
and
It's
here's the thing:
ridiculous.
you
It's
don't have to
ridiculous.
look. Yeah, you don't have to look outside of DC to see how to do this right. Right, like and to this day,
Well,
one of
yeah,
my
you're right.
favorite,
Right, and
my
we mentioned
favorite,
that earlier. Yeah, go ahead.
what's it called? DC comic anything is Kingdom Come. It's my favorite
Yeah,
DC story.
that's
Um,
right. Yeah,
and it's so good on so many levels. But one of the things it's pretty much Injustice, but done better because there's a actual moral and there's actual like message in the story that's like inspiring, and also it's realistic, right? Because the conflict isn't just evil Superman. The conflict is the old guard versus the new generation, right? And
yeah,
how will they come to a compromise? Because it's the same thing. Lois and the Daily Planet, they get murdered by the Joker,
yeah,
but and what ends up happening is a new hero shows up on the scene before Superman, and he kills the Joker. And Superman, instead of going evil, he brings Magog, the villain's name is Magog to justice,
just right. Exactly.
and he gets let
Exactly.
off because it's like, yeah, we don't like the Joker, so
Yeah. So yeah,
he's
it's
kind of
okay.
a
We'll
terrible
let it
person.
slide
Yeah,
this time. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody respects Magog over Superman, And so Superman just bounces out. He just withdraws from society, and that has a buttload of like people didn't realize it at the time, but that had a buttload of consequences, right?
Right.
Because with Superman gone, not only did crime skyrocketed, but Magog led an entire new generation of essentially vigilantes with no morals, right? And so eventually,
Right.
what turned
Exactly. Yeah.
into a bunch of superhero teams became gang violence, right? It was
Right.
heroes fighting other heroes,
It was
right?
just
Because they had no
vigilante
morals.
justice everywhere. Yeah.
It
There was no
wasn't even vigilante justice.
guiding
It was just
principle. Yeah.
gang warfare because it was
Yeah.
heroes
That's right.
fighting other heroes. Kind of like what we,
Right.
ironically,
That
kind of like what
exactly.
we
Yeah. The
see today.
heroes were stepping on each other's toes. They weren't cooperating with each other. They were competing.
Yeah,
It wasn't about what we would call the greater good. Right.
yeah,
It was just about finding some type of twisted perception of glory. Right.
yeah. And
And yeah. Yeah.
the
And it's
whole
yeah.
series climax, like Superman doesn't get pushed over the edge until like late in the story when the UN essentially nukes all the metahumans.
Yeah. That's right.
And Superman's finally like, he's pissed off and he tries to murder the UN. But it takes a normal person, just a royal. He was a pastor
He's a priest. Yeah.
for
That's right.
and for context, this type of story, Mark Wade, I believe, an article I've done before with Marvel, where it was a story from the viewpoint of an
Just a
average
regular
Joe.
person. Yeah.
So
That's
in
right.
Marvels, it was a news reporter,
Yeah.
and
That's
then
right.
in Kingdom Come, he was a
Yeah.
preacher. He was a
Yeah.
priest, pastor type character,
Yeah.
and
That's right.
so he finally, I think the only difference is the average Joe in this case actually has more interactions with the heroes. So he steps up to Superman and he like convinces him like you value this the super more than the man. And I'm paraphrasing obviously. It's a great
Yeah.
speech. Go read it. And Superman, before he has a chance to do anything, he's got to regret. He repents. They step down from the Justice step down from because they had like the watchtower and stuff, and they decided to set their new base on Earth, and they start working with the new vigilantes and training them and stuff like that how to do good.
Right. In other
But
words, it
there's this,
ends on a hopeful note.
yeah,
Yeah.
but more importantly, there's an actual lesson to be learned on both sides because even Magog repents, right? We
Yeah.
see
That's
him
right.
regretting his actions because he basically caused a genocide basically by complete accident.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening in the story is he part of one of his superhero team on his superhero team was Captain Atom and Parasite. They're fighting Parasite, and Parasite kills Captain Atom. But he's a nuclear bomb basically, so he blows up and wipes out like basically the entire Midwest.
Yeah. Basically, that's right.
Yeah,
Because remember they had
it's
that superhero prison or whatever, that
yeah,
maximum
and so
security.
that's what brings
Yeah.
Superman to come back. So he's like, okay, either you guys fall in line with the Justice League, or we're gonna put you in this apocalypse gulag that we
Yeah.
had the son of
Basically. Yeah.
Darkseid built.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gets crazy, and but basically, Magog and the other vigilantes learned that you need a moral compass when fighting crime. You need ethics when fighting crime. And the old guard, Superman, the Justice League, they learn that they're not, they don't have all the answers, right? And they have to recognize that things, not
But
everything that,
you still have to trust humanity to do what's right.
yeah,
Ultimately, like they realize their place in it is to help
not
guide
above them
guide
but
them.
among
Yeah,
them.
not above them, but right to help guide it, not to rule over it. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It's a beautiful story. I loved
It,
how Wonder Woman was portrayed. She was a great character.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I feel like the one constant, although I think Wonder Woman's a lot better here than she is in Injustice, but
Oh yeah, yeah, way better.
But the one constant is it seems like whenever Lois Lane dies, like Wonder Woman kind of like kind kind of
Yeah,
slides into the
slips,
scene.
slides in the DMs. Yeah.
Yeah, but and like
Well, I mean,
it's even
listen,
worse in
you know,
Injustice because like in
they try to
Injustice,
ship Batman and Wonder Woman through the animated versions, right?
that's
And
true.
it's like okay, you know, but honestly, Superman and Wonder Woman makes way more sense.
I
It
mean,
it
sure, yeah,
just
I'm not
it
upset,
you know yeah
but it's just I just thought it
you
was
know
funny because
Lois Lane
it
and,
was a little,
Superman is that's the classic, but once you started bringing in Wonder Woman into the narrative, the continuity, it's like
yeah,
yeah, Wonder Woman makes sense. Like
yeah,
especially considering she's an Amazon and there's the whole idea of her perception of mankind, right,
hmm
and men in general, right? Because she's a feminist icon, so to have her fall for Superman, right? It's kind of like, oh, interesting. Like that's a shift in her worldview, right?
hmm
It's like there's a lot of subtlety in that. So
yeah,
that's
that's
why I
fair.
think it's kind of
And
cool. It's
to
not
be
just
fair,
about yeah, like she of all the the women available, like she would make sense because she is super powerful, right?
yeah,
Um,
no,
but
I'm not like
also
it's not. I don't think it's a bad thing or anything.
yeah, but also the dynamic of being an Amazon and then Superman is Superman.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, that's
it's
interesting
just
because
more the timing of Lois Lane's dead. Now's my chance. It's just kind of awkward,
well,
you know.
yeah, if you can try to read that subtext
Yeah.
into it, I suppose.
But yeah, but it's not as bad in the original one. Like I said, I don't have any problem with the shit. Fun a little fun fact: there's a sort of a cult classic anime called Project Echo, where
Yeah,
the
yeah,
protagonist is literally the daughter of Superman and Wonder Woman. And
yeah,
it's a plot twist that's revealed at the end because you see Clark Kent reading the Daily Planet, and
yeah,
you see the
yeah.
mom with the Wonder Woman apron. It's kind of funny.
It is funny actually. I remember that.
But
Yeah,
Kingdom Come, like you can't nobody you can't tell me the moral of Injustice. There is no moral. It's just dark things happening because you know we want an evil Superman, right? And speak,
well,
yeah,
it's the idea of like, what would it be like? What would happen? What would the world look? And it's kind of like, okay, I mean, it's okay to ask those questions, right?
yeah,
And
but even a war a
flesh
what if,
out. That's what the first Injustice game kind of was about. Like, what would it look like? What would it be like? If Superman did kind of just put his foot down and was
yeah,
like,
yeah, but
"Hey."
that works because it's a video game,
Well,
right? It's
no,
a
it,
one
it
and
works as
done.
a narrative too. It's just how the narrative is executed. Like I said, the video game I think did a good job because they introduced the idea of the multiverse and the fact that, oh well, what if we can go back to that other world and get the good Superman and
The
bring him
real
here?
Superman, yeah.
So it's like, but what if there is no, and that's part of the problem I think with the movie I had is they still introduced the multiverse and they had a Lois from another world, and it's kind of like okay, but it's like what changes a man, right, from doing what is wrong to doing what is right. And a lot of times it's not just, oh, my wife and kids or something, or someone else's wife and kids. It's the idea that ultimately I have to answer for what I'm doing,
Yeah.
right, to a creator, to someone greater than me. It's that something within our conscience that tells us that. That's number one, right? It's also the question of what kind of man do I want to be, right? Especially when what you're doing doesn't yield the results that you intended, right? Ultimately, there's going to be a desire to say, maybe I should change course, especially if you have others that you respect, your peers, telling you you're wrong, telling you, hey, you need to change course. And that's what happened throughout that movie, the Injustice movie, the animated movie. And he just didn't listen. It was kind of like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I don't. It doesn't seem plausible that he would be that stubborn, right? Even in the midst of grief,
Yeah.
losing someone
Also,
he
he
cared
he
deeply.
he ends up just straight up murdering regular people.
That's what I'm saying, right? There's that scene where I guess it's some kind of was it like some kind
It's
of
it's a
rave
it's
or
a
nightclub?
rave, and
Yeah,
they're
and he
basically
just
worshiping the Joker,
yeah he just
and
goes in and just zaps him. It's like what?
it's like
Like that's a huge leap, right?
like
Like
whoa there.
that's a huge leap from
Yeah.
I'm just gonna kill an actual villain, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like
Versus
the point of no return.
misguided teenagers.
Yeah,
Like that's like what that's what I mean. Like
yeah.
it's just
Funny
I don't know.
enough, I feel like the Red Sun Superman handled that a lot better because he wasn't inherently evil. He was just
that's a good
communist.
contrast because the Red Sun
I like that
story, yeah,
story. Yeah.
it's about him being fully immersed in a completely different society,
Hmm.
worldview, and ideology, right?
Yeah.
So it follows logically that yeah, he's gonna follow the culture that he's immersed in,
Hmm.
right? And be just as patriotic, but for a different nation.
Right.
But then certain things happen where he starts to see, well, maybe this isn't what I thought it
Yeah.
was, right? Like,
And,
and he
and at
finds
the
out about
end, he
deceptions and
ends
different
up
things.
righting his wrongs by sacrificing himself.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I agree. He wasn't presented as just evil,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the beauty of that. That was actually a decent story. I
I
did
really
enjoy
like
it.
it. I
And
like
it's like
the
because
twist at the end.
it's like he's not just evil, and he's not. He's just enforcing the ideology that he's adapted, but then he's proven to be malleable with it
Hmm.
because thanks to their version of Batman and Wonder Woman, etc. Right? Like
Right.
encountering them and realizing, the world isn't what I thought it was, right? What I
Right.
was taught, and then
Hmm.
there's things that I believe that were lies, right? He finds out
Yeah.
about the deceptions involved and his being manipulated. So it's like, and he doesn't completely abandon, you know, Russia or its coach,
Hmm.
it's just he does shift gears though. He does, and that's very different. Yeah, that's a very different dynamic than Injustice, where it's just he Superman is just acting out.
Right.
He's just mad, so he's gonna just kill everybody. It's like, well,
Yeah.
even in the midst of that, would he really go that far that quickly?
No.
You know, it's like probably not.
Yeah. So it's speaking of anime and evil supervillains. I don't know. I meant to share this with you yesterday, but they made some of my friends were talking about it at work
Mhm.
about the Suicide Squad isekai. I don't know if you saw that.
Um, I may have. I don't recall.
Okay, so essentially, they're making an anime about the Suicide Squad.
Right.
Where I don't know. Do you know what an isekai is, Dad? It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so basically the Suicide Squad gets sent to another world because
I
honestly
mean,
I
did they
don't
do
know.
that with Ruby and the Justice
I
League?
mean, essentially, yeah. It's
Yeah.
basically that, but now it's the Suicide Squad. Well, instead of two properties crossing over together, it's the Suicide Squad gets sent to a generic fantasy anime land, and yeah, that's it. And it's yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I don't know, it's kind of weird because it's like the whole isekai trope in anime is already played out. And me personally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of the Suicide Squad outside of the context of, you know, I guess the Justice League, and specifically Batman.
Hmm.
Um, like I get it; they're basically like evil A team, which is cool. Um, but I think they've been trying to put the Suicide Squad into the forefront for a while, and
Yeah. Well, it goes.
to mixed
It's in line
results.
with what you were saying about this uh, huge emphasis on villains now, right? In the
Yeah.
DC continuity, like there's, it's like the Suicide Squad. I guess they're villains who become vigilantes for a secret government agency, right? Under the threat of being exploded,
We
basically.
have bombs in your yeah, we
Yeah.
implant bombs in
And
yeah.
it's like, okay, I mean, it's fine.
Like
It's
that
a
could
great,
work, yeah.
yeah, it's a great idea. I liked it. I liked Assault on Arkham. Like that came out years ago.
Yeah.
That was actually really good. It was fun, you know. But they painted the characters in a way that made you like them, right? Um,
Right.
and but they were still villains. You still remember, oh yeah, this guy's still a bad guy, right?
Yeah,
And but it was fun. It was a lot of betrayal and all that good stuff, right?
yeah, but here
And
it's like
Batman was still thrown in the mix, which was, I think, a very smart way. Like he wasn't necessarily the focal point of the story, though, which was funny.
right.
But yeah, I mean, it's
Like yeah, here it's like, what's the point of this? Like, why are they in an isekai? Like,
it's
why?
just something to do, right? I mean, because the Suicide Squad is what's popular now because of the two iterations of movies that we've had, then the spinoff with what's his name, John Cena. I forgot the character's
Oh,
name.
Peacemaker.
Yeah, Peacemaker.
I never watched that.
And that did well. The series, I
Yeah,
didn't care for it as much. I thought it was kind of meh. Like you know, um, yeah, I think it could have been like really, really good, like really funny. But I, I don't know. It's I have my critiques of it, but it was kind of just average in my opinion. A
yeah.
lot of people kind of raved about it, but I think it was because it's kind of that whole idea of Kool-Aid in the desert. Like you're happy you got something to drink, but
But it's not good for
it's
you.
not good for you. Yeah, it's really not good, especially because it's not cold, right?
Yeah,
So that's kind of it's because there's a dearth of good entertainment. Mediocre entertainment stands out more, right? And
yeah,
I think that's what Peacemaker was. It was kind of mediocre. There's a lot of stuff done for gags that was kind of like, oh, okay, I guess, like the
yeah,
best part for me was the intro when they were like doing the dance and all that. That was actually kind of funny. Like, I actually enjoyed that. But the rest of it was, I don't know, it was hit and miss most of the episodes. So. But yeah, it's just like we're seeing a lot of Harley Quinn, right? We've been seeing a lot of her.
yeah. And that's the thing though. It's
She
like
happens to be popular now, right?
Harley
So
Quinn doesn't make a whole lot of sense outside of the context of
of the
the
Joker
Joker
and
and the
Batman,
Batman.
I
Yeah,
agree.
and I'm not
But
saying that
but
like
yet that's what we're getting
she should always
because
be the Joker's sidekick or anything, but at the same time, it's like,
I agree. Yeah.
why is she like outside of like you know the Joker? Like, if she's not like, why is she still a bad guy? Like, why is she? Why does she do what she does?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They've tried to make her more of a sympathetic character. They like in her show, they basically made her a lesbian. So I'm not sure why or where that comes from, or you know, and it's a lot. It's a lot that they keep kind of throwing at the wall to see what sticks, so to speak. Like the Harley Quinn movie was. I was like, what's the point of this movie? I don't really
Yeah, I don't
see.
watch it.
Yeah, it's like her liberation from what exactly? Like, because and I'm just going by how she was presented in the animated series, in the Batman animated series, and
Well,
subsequent
that's where
movies.
she comes from. Yeah,
And she was never some kind of slave, or she was a willing participant with the Joker. She went crazy, and crazy was attracted to crazy, right?
yeah,
And so it wasn't really about. That's what I'm saying. Like just things like that, like the way she's been presented, it's like she's this feminist icon or something. Like, oh, she's breaking away from the Joker, and it's like, well, I guess, but she's the one that joined him in the first place. It wasn't like she was forced or manipulated. So it's very I don't know. That seems to be the subtext. I'll put it that way. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't see the huge appeal, especially like the scene in the, I guess it was the second Suicide Squad movie, right, where she walks in and she kind of just breaks out on her own.
I didn't
It's
watch the
like,
second Suicide Squad
yeah,
movie.
because she was supposed to be captured, I guess, and then she, like I said, she breaks out on her own, and it's kind of like, okay, so they couldn't have her get rescued, right? They had to play it up as a gag, where she literally rescues herself, right? It's like that's just messaging, right? Because it's absurd. Because the context of the movie itself, it's like, so there's this kind of dumb luck that happens to these characters or to her. I don't know, right? It doesn't make any
Mm.
sense, right? And she's like well known by this ruler of this kingdom, and he's just loves her. It's
What?
like, yeah, it's like it's a ridiculous premise, and it's like you could have still had that scene, but in a different context. Where what if she was rescuing the rest of the squad versus escaping, right?
Yeah.
And there's like some things. Maybe she had some help from some an unlikely ally, things like that, right? Like there's a lot of ways you could have played it where it makes more sense and it's just fun
Yeah.
versus it kind of like it's just a silly scene that looks cool, it's visually cool, but it's just kind of just slapped in there. Like there was no like, and overall, I liked the movie. That's the thing. That particular Suicide, I think it was James Gunn, right? It was actually more entertaining than the
Hmm.
first one. I think it was a better cast. And my biggest disappointment wasn't even the Harley Quinn stuff. It was the Polka Dot Man being killed, in the third act. That was really
Uh huh.
disappointing because I really liked that character.
Right.
I actually wanted him to, be, kind of use his powers, and we find out his powers are like really powerful, like really like off the wall, and then he gets squished, and it's like that's it. It's like, bro, why would you do that? It's like I don't know. I think some of these directors and writers, they're
Well,
so
but that
cynical.
but
They
that
don't
falls
they
into
don't
a
take any of it seriously enough to just give us
yeah.
like something compelling. They have to play it up for a gag and go overboard, or they have to be like extra dark or cynical, or it's like I don't know. It's just like M Night Shyamalan, right? When he did what was the last movie he did? He did
Uh,
Unbreakable, then he did the
oh, are you talking
man,
about
Mr.
with Bruce
Glass. Yeah,
Willis
Glass. It
and
was called
Mr.
Glass.
Glass?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like he kills everybody. He kills all the heroes, right? It's and
Oh.
he dies in the most ridiculous way. He's drowned by a puddle. It's like, bro, you don't like heroes and you hate your fans. That's what I got out of that movie. And like I haven't watched a single one of his movies since then. I don't like him because of that. Because I think that was just spit in the face of people that actually enjoyed his previous movies, especially Unbreakable and the one with John McAvoy, right?
Uh
It's
huh.
like, okay, those are like great treatments. It's like, oh, this is kind of. Then he crossed the worlds over. It's like, oh, okay, and all of it was just to basically crap on the idea of the Marvel universe and superhero movies. That's literally the only purpose of that. That's why he did it, right? And it sucks. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, who are
Hmm.
these people and why are they? Who's like propping them up so that they can create the garbage that they create? Because that's really what's happening. It's like no like normal person is gonna watch this stuff and think like, yeah, this is entertaining. It's like, no, it's not. It's not entertaining at all. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is you're just putting out garbage and you're insulting your audience. You're like
Yeah.
it's I don't
I
know.
mean, back to beat to DC, and I mean it stems from like a larger problem with like I said, putting villains into the forefront as opposed to heroes. Like just recently, we got a trailer for a mobile game of all things, based off of the Batman Who Laughs, and who's essentially
Yeah,
just
I saw that.
evil Batman if he took the Joker poison or whatever. And the reason I was laughing, for context, the reason I was laughing earlier, is because the Batman Who Laughed apparently comes from, and I'm not making this up, the Dark Multiverse, which it's not a
Yeah,
alternate
that's right.
universe. It's not an alternate universe. It's another multiverse. So it's
Right,
another
it's a
set
parallel
of universe.
multiverse. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But
it's
that's the
like
thing. It's like, why do we need? So it's just, why do you need an alternate
but
multiverse?
it's not even that it's like, okay, I've had similar ideas, right? Having a parallel multiverse. But it's like, but what's the point?
Yeah.
Like,
But what is
is it
the
it's like
the
are you really creating a whole other playground to play in? Or does this lead to something? Like there's no culmination that's involved with this multiverse idea. It's just, well, it's there and we kind of just do whatever we want because we can just pull it out of left field and just say, oh, he's from Earth 2000, blah blah blah, right?
yeah.
And there everybody has square heads and round fingers. I don't like, it doesn't matter. There's no logic or rhyme or reason to it. It's just convenient as a plot device, right? And it's like, okay, fine, but I don't know. I kind of feel like it just feels so convoluted, right? Just
Yeah,
reading about the Batman Who Laughs, like just to, after watching the trailer, I kind of looked it up a little more, and it's like, man, this is all over the place. Like
yeah,
there's so much going on, and then you're throwing in the anti-monitor and the dark multiverse and all this, and alternate versions of Bruce from alternate world. I'm just like, who? Like, if there's so many versions of this character, why do I care about this character? I don't. I don't care about this character. If there's a million versions of him, who cares if this one dies? Who cares if you know?
yeah.
Thanks for tuning
It's
in,
kind of silly.
Afrocentric. Appreciate it. But yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
why do I care if there's 10 Supermen, from various iterations of reality? Why do I care about my Superman from this reality? I don't care.
yeah, but
He's not
yeah,
special. There's nothing unique about him because there's 100 other worlds with the same Superman. Even if there's a slight variation, like he's black or he's, Asian or something, or he's gay. It's like, so what? you know,
yeah,
like who cares? Like there's one where he's the president. It's like, okay, wonderful. He's Superman and the president. Okay, like like sometimes like compounding things is
yeah.
doesn't
Well, I
really
mean,
do
there's
anything.
that, but then, like I said, there's also like like I said, just the fact that you know, I don't know, they think that we relate to the villains for some reason. There were a few years
Well,
ago
yeah,
they
there's
had
that popular
this.
notion, right? That villains are more relatable for some reason. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
with that, a few years ago they had this panel. I guess it was called the Woman of Marvel, and they were talking about the villains, and one of them had brought up, you know, I guess they're writing a story about the villains, and this, just quoting from they were like, I also love how you brought up a villain because that's something I laugh about a lot. Like when people bring up the very valid academic sources about queer coding and villainy, but at the same time, I identify with the villains, and they're all talking about how they identify with the villains. These writers that write comic books, right? And you know, they're talking about, oh, well, they were traumatized and abused. That's why they're villains. And it's like, well, yeah. I mean, you know, I think it's like people forget about the whole, what's that old saying? What hardens the egg softens the potato, right? Where it's like, yeah, they were. I mean, yeah, the hero was also like they think that just because the villain was a victim, right? Or they have perceived valid reasons, right? That means that they're not actually the villain or whatever. And it's like, well, no, it's not. That's not how that works. It's like what defines a hero and a villain is the response to the trauma. It's the response to the struggle, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, both Batman and the Joker had one bad day, but how they choose to react to that bad day defined them whether they were a good person or a bad person, right? Batman took his bad day and turned it into motivation to fight crime. Joker took his bad day and took it into
Became a
motivation
criminal.
to,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and
And it's about choices, right? It's about what do you do when life hits you with whatever, right?
yeah,
It's
and it's
like
like why would I want to look? Why would I want to identify with somebody who purposely makes bad choices?
right, exactly.
You
And
know,
that's the
it's like,
quintessential villain, right? Is someone who makes perpetually bad decisions. That's
yeah,
exactly
and
right.
it's like, and one of them was like, and I quote, "I would rather see that story, i.e., a villain story, that the one where the person is like, hi, I'm a good person, and that's it. I'm gonna go punch the bad guy." So clearly, they have a very, you know, black and white perception of, the
Yeah,
whole
but it's
hero
it's
story.
black and white in reverse, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm just
Yeah,
saying they don't understand what makes a hero a hero. They think the hero is just someone who's like, oh, "Hi, I'm a good person." Like that's not how that works usually in good stories,
Yeah.
you know. And
Well,
it's
yeah, of
like,
course not. But see, it's that cynicism, that postmodern perspective that comes in, where you have to oversimplify, right, a what's really very nuanced and dynamic, which is the idea of a superhero or any kind of hero, right, whether they have special powers or abilities or not. Just the idea of someone, particularly a male, that is willing to put themselves in harm's way to save, protect, or help someone, right? And it's like, instead of seeing the possibilities of that and the nuance involved, it's easy to diminish it to, oh, they're just being self righteous and touting their goodness. And it's like, well, how is, and that's the thing. Think about the logic, right? How is that, if is that the case when someone gives to the poor or donates to a charity, or are they just
right,
touting their goodness, or are they actually, genuinely moved by the situation they're trying to help, right? Like, it's so easy to diminish the reality that people are moved when others are in trouble, right? We are affected. We do want to help, generally speaking, right? That's a natural desire we all have. And many of us, and this is why superheroes do resonate with us, is that we wish we could do more. We wish we
hmm,
could save those lives. We wish we could
right,
end poverty and suffering, and
right,
we wish we could stop those bad guys from doing bad things, right? We wish we had the ability, and that's what the hero and the superhero in particular represents, is that here's a character that does have the ability to make a difference, to really stop terrible things from happening to good, seemingly good people, right? I mean, that's what Spider-Man was all about, right? With great power comes what? Great responsibility, right? And it's like, that's why the responsibility is great, because you have that power to literally change things for the better. And if you don't use it, then what does that make you, right? If you willfully say, I have this power, but I'm only going to use it for my own gain,
right,
right? Right. That's unethical and immoral, right? It
yeah,
speaks of bad character, not good character, right?
yeah.
So,
I,
and
I'm
but that's been so diluted and convoluted now, right? That it's somehow righteous to be selfish, you know?
yeah. I'm reminded of I don't of this character from Star Trek Next Generation. I don't know if you remember. I forgot his name, but he was like purposely made to be like a loser, and to the point where he kept making mistakes, and uh, he was very clumsy,
Yeah.
and it's not what's this called? It's not the kid that you might be thinking of. Um, he was like a side character who like worked on the ship, who assisted the main cast. Like he was
Hmm.
purposely made to be like a loser. And I
Yeah.
remember reading something about an interview with the cast and whatnot, and the writers, and they were talking about most Star Trek fans, when they envision themselves in the story, they think that they're, oh, I'm Picard, I'm what's his name, Riker, I'm Worf. But in reality, if they really were in the Star Trek world, they'd be this guy. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, yeah, he's right. Because we're not Picard. We're not. That's why we look up to these characters, because we're not them.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. But we aspire to be like them.
Right.
And that's really what it is the aspiration, right? It's not about being perfect, it's aspiring to be perfect, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with striving to be the best you can be, right? Because it benefits everyone, including yourself, right? And that's the beauty of a hero, a superhero in particular, is that they inspire us to aspire for greatness, right? And I think that's kind of gotten lost, and now it's the lowest common denominator in many cases of like vengeance and revenge, and Like
Mhm.
it's not about justice, it's about vengeance,
Yeah.
and or it's just about like, you know like I said, like with the Joker movie is a good example of like that cynicism, where he just gets devolves and gets worse and worse, right? And it's a villain movie, so it's like this is how he became a villain. He was just a very cynical person at the beginning, and he became more cynical by the end. That's that's really
Yeah.
it. And there was a lot of people for some reason who were inspired by him because he murdered a man on television. It's kind of like, wow, okay. I would hope that wouldn't be the case, but it's very dark, right? And it's like, but it's because like, yeah, he stuck it to the man because that character represented, you know, corporate greed or something, or
Right.
it's like it's very nonsensical, really, on its face, but you know, it resonates with that cynicism that a lot of people have, right? And like I said, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it in the sense that it was cinematically a beautiful movie, um, and it was compelling. But it is a sad commentary as well, you know. And it's like, you know, why not have more? You know, why not focus more on the heroes and giving us more of that? Even like let's say, okay, look, we've done all the Batmans we could do, and I think a lot of people are getting tired of Batman. I know I am. And we've done all the Superman, we've done all the one. Well, hey, there's Cyborg, right? There's Nightwing. There's
The
what I mean. Like there's a
Teen
plethora
Titans.
of other heroes. There's Plastic Man. You mentioned Plastic Man earlier.
Oh man,
Like
Plastic Man.
why aren't we getting more of that? You know,
That would be awesome.
there's
I don't
plenty to
know.
choose
See, here's
from.
the thing. Why didn't they make Plastic Man the Deadpool of the DC universe? Why did they
Well,
make
because
like?
Plastic Man isn't the
I know
Deadpool,
he's not, but I'm saying
but I
like
know what you're
the
saying.
whole the
He
whole
breaks the
reason why
fourth
they put
wall and
Harley
things like that.
Quinn
Yeah,
in the front is because they wanted Harley Quinn to be
like
DC's
Deadpool.
answer
Yeah,
Marvel's Deadpool, but
but
that's
she's
not
not
what she
because
was made for.
right. She was
But
never made
Plastic
to do
Man
that.
is actually funny, and he's a
Right, Plastic
hero,
Man is hilarious.
so
Yeah,
he'd be the
and
antithesis
right,
to Deadpool.
right he could be because he's not dark.
Yeah,
he's
he's
not
also
he's not
a
cynical.
former villain turned hero.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he would have been great, but I don't think they know or understand how to handle Plastic Man when you're translating him to animation or television. They did it way back when I was a kid. I
Oh yeah,
remember
I
there was
remember that.
an animated series, and he had a whole plastic jet. And it was like really wacky, right?
I mean, yeah,
And
it's
but it
Plastic
was
Man. It's
fun. I
wacky.
mean, I loved it. I watched it as a kid. It was great. Uh, it's like, but I think then they understood the idea of a hero, and big part of it was to entertain and have fun, right? And now I don't know if they, when I say they, I mean the studios, like the people they're choosing to sort of anchor these movies and whatnot. It's like I'm not sure if they understand that anymore. Like if they see it as like this is supposed to be fun and engaging and inspiring, right? And I don't I don't I don't know. I think since Endgame, and even Endgame, as much as I enjoyed it, it was very satisfying. But there are issues with it, right? It's not just the fact that it's an imperfect movie, but it's like the injection of Captain Marvel for no reason. Why? For woke points, right? I mean, that's really why they put that character in and gave her a movie when she literally came out of nowhere, right? Like
Yeah, that's
the
pretty
comic book
true.
wasn't in demand. Nobody was talking about, like, there was no like fan demand of Captain Marvel, right? No one was saying what fans were actually asking for was a Black Widow movie, right? And they didn't give us that until
Until
after Endgame,
afterwards.
which still which still is dated prior to Endgame. You know what I mean? Like it's so stupid, right? Like why would you give us a Black Widow movie after she's dead? We already know what's going to happen to her. Versus giving it to us maybe in between Infinity War or or prior to, right? Like it's like I don't know. It's so silly, But it just shows, yeah. Then at that, it's a you know barely mediocre movie at that, right? That movie made no sense to me. Like it was like, what is happening? Like what is the point of all this? it's like, but it's their own internal agenda, right? It has nothing to do with what we actually expect to see or want to see. So I'm convinced of that now after the Acolyte and all that stuff. I'm thoroughly convinced that the goal of Disney with any of these properties is not to entertain us. It's to simply push their agenda for whatever reason, right? It could be for money. It could be because they really do believe these things, whatever those, these have this woke ideology, right? This, and then they disguise it as representation, while at the same time ignoring actual authentic, you know, minority characters that are already there, that's been there for decades, right? Already established, and completely ignore them, right? Same thing with the other studios like Warner Brothers. They're doing the same thing. So it's really frustrating to say the least.
Yeah.
It's annoying. That's why for me, I'm pretty much checked out. Like when it comes to a lot of mainstream stuff, that's what I'm saying. Like with DC, it's like, yeah, there's a hyper emphasis on villains. Okay, they're just going spiraling down the rabbit hole, right? And they're probably gonna, fall. Like I don't know, if they probably won't go bankrupt because they're owned by Warner Brothers. But they're gonna end up probably diminishing the company somehow, breaking it apart, selling off the assets. The licensing the characters, that would be smart. They'll probably do that if they don't just sell it off outright. And hopefully, if they do sell it, someone who actually cares about comics and heroes will get it and actually do something great with those properties. So, or if they license it, same thing. Hopefully, they'll license it to people that care enough to do right by it, right? Do give us great stuff. So we'll see.
Right.
But Disney, yeah, it's like you know, these people they just don't care. There's this. It's hard to even like. It's this. They just don't care. You know, it's clear they don't care.
Yeah.
Right? They say it openly now. Like you don't care. They literally like the Doctor Who guy that was cast. Right? He's like,
Well,
well, don't
that's
watch it. If you don't like it, don't watch it. We've
well,
heard
yeah. Well,
comic book
that's
writers say the same thing in the comic space from
yeah.
Marvel and DC. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Don't buy it. Don't buy my books.
It's like
And
okay.
guess what? Yeah, we say okay, and we don't, and then they get mad when you don't. It's like
Yes.
like look, bro, like either you're gonna give the audience what they actually want, or you're gonna continue to make what you want, which has nothing to do with entertainment, right? So you can't have it both ways. You can't put out your own ideology that's just littered with you know just nonsense that's not even subtle. You don't, you don't even make the effort to be subtle with it or nuanced, and then say to people, well, don't buy it if you don't like it. Then when they don't, because they don't like it, you get upset and you call everybody racist or homophobic or something. It's like you can't have it both ways, man. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna stand on principle and say, I need to represent, you know, these people, you know, whatever, and I need to be as blatant with it as possible. Okay, well, that's your choice.
Well,
The
well,
consequence is most people aren't going to like it, right?
I
Because you're
remember
not
when
giving a great story. Go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
remember when they no, you're good. I remember when they put out they did this whole series of what if stories where what if Miles Morales was a different superhero besides Spider-Man, and it was already a silly premise because it kind of shows just how much of a blank slate non character Miles Morales is in the comics. Because it's like, well, if Miles Morales could be all these different heroes, then why is he Spider Man? You know. But the worst one out of the bunch was the what if Miles Morales was Thor,
Yeah,
where
I remember that.
literally like they turn Asgard into the hood,
Yeah, yeah,
where it was like graffitied on, and it had the sneakers on the telephone poles, and I was like, "What is this?
Yeah, I don't understand like
It's hammer time."
I don't understand why the ghetto is always glorified um, in that way.
Because
It's
people conflate
romanticized, right?
hip hop culture with the entirety of black culture. That's
Yeah, they do. And well, I don't know. I mean, oh, that's a whole other conversation about what is black culture? What is the black community? Is that even a thing? Sure, there's communities that are predominantly black, right? So you can call that a black community, but is there a universal black community, right? And the same on the same level as you can say the Asian community or something like right, where you have people who are from a certain region in certain countries that we consider Asian, right? It's like I don't know, right? Like
like,
because think about it when someone says black community, do you think of someone from Nigeria or Kenya
no,
or Uganda
no.
or
Yeah,
South Africa?
I
I
would have
don't.
said
I
Nigerian
mean,
community or the
well,
African
that's my
community.
point, right? I don't think of someone who's from Africa, from the continent of Africa, or from the Caribbean, right? I don't think of anyone from the Caribbean or South America.
I
I
don't
only
even
think
think
of
someone from the
someone from
South. I
America.
think someone from LA.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. I don't even think of someone who's
Because
from the South.
Southern
Yeah,
black people are very different
very
than
different from the rest. Yeah,
me,
from
myself.
Northerners and us on the West. Yeah,
You know,
it's mainly an urban concept, I believe, when it comes
yeah,
to that reference, right? And that's what I'm saying. It's a lot of misnomers attached to that, and I think what happens is you have a lot of liberal people, black and white, who are involved with things like Miles Morales, the what if stuff, and their perception is skewed, right? And they tend to romanticize certain aspects as if it's a universal understanding, right? That graffiti on a building is a good thing for some reason. You know what I mean? Like defacing a property is okay. It's okay to have for taggers to tag up. So let's include it in this cover. It's like and not only that, but the association of that, which is a sign of lawlessness, right? With a black character. Although I think he's black and Puerto Rican, right? Just because he happens to grow up in, I guess he's supposed to be from the Bronx or something, right? Or Brooklyn,
yeah,
the Bronx. You
yeah,
know, it's kind of, and it's funny because you think about other characters like Spider Man or Captain America, who are both from New York, from the Bronx or Brooklyn, right? There's no association of criminality with them. Think about that.
yeah,
We don't associate graffiti and crime with Spider Man or Captain America, even though they are supposed to be from those same areas
right.
that Miles Morales is from. It's only Miles Morales who you associate the quote unquote hood, you know, and I guess hip hop culture in general or whatever, which, hip hop culture, well, it's once again like, what are you referring to? Are you referring to, I don't know, Kendrick Lamar or or Drake or somebody, like,
Yeah,
are you talking about old school hip hop, KRS One, BDP, all that stuff, Public Enemy? Are you talking about gangster rap,
yeah.
NWA?
Even that is
Like,
not just a one size fits all thing.
well, that's my point, right? Hip hop culture is kind of like, well, I don't know what it's just there's fashion elements, right? Like Kanye, right? I mean, it's like, but why is it hip hop if it happens to be a black person? Like Kanye literally is a rapper. He's a hip hop icon, so it makes sense that what he does in other areas like fashion can be considered hip hop or an extension of hip hop culture. But why is that the case with Miles Morales? You understand? When I don't
Yeah,
even think he was created by a you know a black or Puerto Rican person, was he? I
uh,
mean,
I
so I don't.
really don't know.
It's just kind of odd. Why isn't he just a average teenager like Peter Parker was? Peter Parker was just an average teenager who happens to be from Brooklyn or the Bronx or whatever, right? And you understand what I'm saying? Like, why couldn't he just be Miles Morales, teenager? And yes, maybe he likes hip hop. Like, he can create this profile,
Yeah, Miles was
that
created by Brian Bendis. I don't know if you
Brian
know
Michael
who that is.
Bendis. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I don't think he's. I think he is in a mixed marriage or something like that, right? So um,
he's a white
inter,
dude from Cleveland,
inter,
Ohio. That.
yeah, but no, but I think he's in an interracial relationship. I'm saying
Oh, I see. I
marriage.
see.
So I think I'm not sure. I'm kind of speculating based on random posts I've seen,
Oh,
But
I see.
in any case, I don't, right? It's like I don't know. Like I guess that's his perception of what hip hop culture is or what it's about. I don't know. So, but just just seeing that cover, it's like, what's the thought process, right?
Yeah, I
You
don't
know what I'm
know.
saying?
I don't know.
So, it's I don't immediately think you know generally positive things, unfortunately. So it's yeah, and especially when you're saying this is Asgard, right? That was the logic, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand why. As isn't Asgard supposed to be sort of like heaven, right? Like a you know like
It's
in the
Olympus. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's what I mean.
Olympus.
Like it's Norse
Yeah, it's in Norse
Norse
mythology. It's
mythology,
Olympus.
where isn't that kind of the place warriors go when they die an honorable death and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff, right? So why would I want to fight in a battle and die and go here where there's graffiti on buildings and stuff? Like I don't get that.
because
Like yeah, it makes no sense. Right? It's like what? You wake up in Asgard and someone's tagged up some ancient armor. Yeah,
uh,
you're like, what? Where am I? It's like it makes no sense. So, this is not even. I don't even think this is the cover. This is a internal page, right?
yeah, this
Look
is
at, look at this.
this is the dumbest thing.
It's like what? It's like all over too. Like, look,
Like this got approved by multiple people.
look at this. But why? Like, why would you think that that's? I mean, unless I'm mistaken, and this is actually just a city that he's in.
No, that's at look. Read
So,
the page. The Rainbow
oh,
Bridge
it says Asgard. I
takes him
see.
to his quest. The Bifrost line north. Also
Asgard
it
is his
rhymes.
hood.
Also it rhymes. It rhymes, Dad. It rhymes. It rhymes.
Asgard is his hood. What? So his hood has to look like a hood. Like it has to look like you don't want to live there. I mean, I don't know. This is so tone deaf. It's amazing. But whatever. I don't. That's what I'm saying. Like I've checked out like Marvel, DC. I don't take them seriously anymore.
Yeah. Also,
I don't.
Thor's
I don't
hammer
care.
has graffiti on it. He tagged Thor's hammer.
Of
Thor's
course,
hammer.
because that's what it's all about, man. Disrespecting property rights. Right. let's let's go ahead and deface someone else's property. Including my own because I don't respect my own property. So I'm gonna tag it up and make sure you know it's mine. Right? It's silly. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's not well thought out. It's just the idea that's being romanticized, right? Graffiti and the hood and the ghetto. Let's I mean, I'm surprised they don't have a bunch of winos laying about, you know,
Yeah.
throwing some
Here,
crackheads.
here's the thing:
Where the crackheads at?
you could have a character come from like a rough neighborhood and still have it be like you said. You have
Right, but
Spider Man,
that's
but
not what they're
what?
doing here. What they're doing, it's one thing to lift someone out of a bad situation, right, and become a hero, right? Like
Yeah,
you from a humble beginnings to, you know, major worldwide global something or galactic something,
yeah.
right? This is the opposite, right? They're saying,
Well, one of them,
hey,
yeah,
he just has the power because I guess he's worthy. Why? Because, right? And now he turned Asgard into his hood, so he has to pull Asgard down, right? We have to take what's considered heavenly and beautiful, and we have to pull it down and make it mundane and
Yeah. But
disrespected
what I'm
basically,
getting
so
at is
that
that
it's on our level in some way,
yeah,
right? That's really what the messaging is in that visual, in the visuals like that is we have to pull what's good and beautiful above us down to us on our level
right,
because we're not good enough to aspire to that level. Like why it's like fine, do a what if, but why not do a story where he you show him show that he's worthy, like he does something that makes him worthy, right? Two, he gets the hammer because he's worthy, and three, he goes to Asgard, right? And in Asgard, the people celebrate him because he's worthy, right? Because he aspired and became something more than what he was,
right.
right? Wouldn't that be a better story than you just slap on the powers and he just has it? And you know what else? He's gonna bring the hood right along with him. He's gonna pull Asgard down and slap some graffiti on everything, and
Yeah, I
it's
don't
my
know.
hood now. Like
I
what?
think yeah,
That's absurd. It's a ridiculous.
yeah.
But like I
I
said,
only bring
they don't think it through. They just romanticize these elements and think that it's somehow beautiful and it means now people of color who live in these communities will see themselves. That's literally how they
yeah.
see it.
Well, what I'm getting at is that, like, so for example, one of my favorite fictional characters ever is Terry Bogart from Fatal Fury. It's a fighting game. It was in the '90s. It was the rival to Street Fighter, stuff like that.
Yeah, I've heard of Fatal Fury.
And yeah, but the reason why Terry Bogart is cool is because, I mean, outside of his backstory, he's just a regular dude, and like he grew up the Southtown. It's like, it's supposed to be a rough. It's the hood essentially, but in Terry's backstory, his father was killed by this crime boss, and so he trained in martial arts to become stronger so he could defeat him, and he joins a fighting tournament and beats him and stuff like that. But outside of the fighting tournament, he's just a normal guy. Like he plays basketball with the neighborhood kids. He's a role model. He's not like but he's not associated with the hood or poverty. He's just a guy. You know what I'm saying? He hangs
Yeah,
out at the local, or everybody just knows him as Terry. Like That's the cool thing about it. He's not like he is a hero, right? But he's not a superhero in a sense where he has an alter ego or anything. Everybody knows who Terry is. But that's
right.
what makes him special is that he's this average dude who went above and beyond, and fights and goes out of his way to fight the strongest people in the world to protect, his neighborhood, and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
it's like that's an inspiring story, right? But nobody associates Terry with graffiti or like being ghetto and stuff like that. Partially because frankly speaking, he's a white dude. but
well, yeah. I mean, that's part of it too. Is it's like you can say, well, that's problematic that we associate being black, basically, or even Latino, right,
yeah,
with being ghetto or the hood, and it's like, well, yeah, but part of the reason why is because we continue to
yeah, it's like we
reinforce that.
started that.
Yeah,
It's like
we I don't want to say we started it, but we definitely latched onto it, and
yeah,
we continue to claim it basically and it's like, well, okay, so like this things like that Miles Morales cover then makes sense, right? Because that's what we're presenting to the world through music and writing and things like that. That the hood is somehow this romantic thing, this beautiful thing. And it's
yeah,
like, well, no, community is a beautiful thing. Neighborhoods that have responsible adults and families and where there's camaraderie, that's a beautiful thing. That can happen anywhere and everywhere, right? It has
right,
nothing to do with this what's been coined as a hood or ghetto mindset, right? Like that's has nothing to do with it. It has to do with is that fact that hey, I have neighbors that I grew up with that we have long history together, and we come together and we celebrate life, and we raise our kids, and we have shared values, right? That's all. That's community. That's all that is. It's not. But what's been associated with that is this romanticized version of it where these elements like graffiti and and when I say graffiti I mean like tagging and things like that, defacing property,
Yeah.
shoes, shoes being hung from wire, like I'm a fan of actual graffiti art. Like I love graffiti art. I think
Hmm.
it's some of the most beautiful art in the world. But there's a context where it does look beautiful, especially in urban environments. It can look very beautiful, right? But I also believe that it should be done with consent, meaning you get the consent of the property owner. You know, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
before you put, even if it's a beautiful thing, a beautiful mural or something, like get consent, get permission from the community, from people that own the property, right? So because then it just becomes tagging, right? It's just
Right.
defacing property. But yeah, graffiti art is beautiful. I know graffiti artists, and that's what I'm saying. Like I'm looking at this image and the others. It's like, yeah, they're not even presenting it in a context where it can be beautiful. Like for example, if they said Asgard is his hood, instead of having actual tagging, which is that's all that is tagging. They actually have a wall that has a beautiful graffiti mural on it. You see, that's a very different
Yeah.
context now, right? It's still urban, right? And it's still associated with the hood, but it's actually one of the more positive things about the hood, right? Is the idea that many people encourage, hey, if you're gonna like deface the property, right, do it with my permission. That's one, but two, make something beautiful, right? Do some dope lettering, do some like cool, some type of cool concept, right? And you see that all throughout LA, at least out here, right? There's a lot of that, There's homages to famous people, like Easy, things like that, right? So it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, it can be done where it's like it's actually adds to the aesthetic versus detracting, and that's what I mean. Like it's clear, like whoever did this didn't understand that, or else they
Yeah.
would have did that instead of just, oh, let's just put some graffiti here and there, tag it up. Like it makes no sense.
Ah.
It's like so ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Versus, yeah, let's do a beautiful graffiti mural, and it's like, oh, okay, it's a little different, right? Like, okay, you can see that from a different perspective now, right? A more positive perspective, in my opinion, right? So because yeah, graffiti art is associated with urban culture, which is generally understood to be black culture or Latino culture, right? And that's fine, right? Because like I said, in my opinion, that's one of the more positive aspects, right? Is
Yeah.
yeah, graffiti art is beautiful. Like it can't, when it's done well, it's like, yeah, that's art, you know. Um, so and a lot of graffiti artists have gone on to become world famous. They've worked in the mainstream, for ad agencies, things like. I mean, so it's art, But and that's kind of why I look at that and like, that's you just missed the mark. Like no, that's not it. So but yeah, it's just so much of that though. That it's very tone deaf virtue signaling, within these major companies, right? And honestly, I'm just tired. I'm kind of worn out. Like, okay, I get the message. It's not for me, so I'll just keep it moving. So that's why for me, I'm tapping into the indie space when it comes to comics and movies and video games, right? Because the video game industry is under siege right now with DEI stuff. Um, there's a lot going on in that space. So it's like, yeah, they're not letting up. They're doubling down. So I say the answer though is um, alternatives. Just seek alternatives where you know creators like us are creating something that we want to appeal to you, right? We
Yeah.
want you to enjoy it. We want you to be entertained by it. Um, it's not going to hit you over the head with check boxes, of DEI stuff, right? It's just authentic storytelling, authentic characters, and fun. That's comics. It's supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be good and fun. It's supposed, um, and I don't know. Somehow we get away from that when we're distracted by, I guess, political, ideological, hoopla, basically, talking points and to some extent it's understandable, but at some point I think the solution is to disengage and get back to basics, right? Which is, hey, I have this great idea. Let's make it into something and hope that others will like it too. And maybe we can make some money from it and or turn it into something bigger, right? Um, and
Hmm.
that's it, and it's still it's happening. Like I said, indie space. We see the Ripperverse, right? Eric July is doing it. He's
Yeah.
getting out there and just making great comics. He's putting his best foot forward, and it's paying off, right? And
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm happy for him. And we see it with Angel Studios, right? They're doing it. They're like, look, people want something that's appealing to everyone, that's appealing to families, right? That's general audience, and so they're putting out a lot of stuff like the Wing Feather Saga and all that. They're doing a movie about David, and they're doing it. You know what I mean? And that's the key. Is just do it. I don't want to spend time complaining without doing it too, right? It's like, yeah, we can gripe about it, but we can
Right.
also be about it. We can start, producing. So, and that's what we're doing. We're producing. We're refining our script. We're narrowing down our art and our look. And we'll be launching our book later this year. So stay in touch. Stay tuned. Please like and share. Check out our site, get a feel for our characters and our universe and what we're trying to build. And we're trying to build something beautiful, something epic, something inspiring. And I hope you'll come along with us within this journey. And thanks for tuning in.
Have a great Father's Day,
Yes,
and
have a
we'll see
great
you around.
Father's Day. Those fathers, dads out there, happy Father's Day to you. And hopefully, check us out next week. Make it a wonderful day.
We'll see you around.